Hey guys, today's story is about a DM who has main characteritis with their DMPC and gets kinda creepy on one of the PCs. This story isn't nearly as horrific as some of the stories that I've seen on here, but there are a lot of similar things that I noticed a few other people have experienced too. And, oh boy, does it still annoy me to this day. We started a new 5e campaign with a DM who was a former player in the group, but his first time DMing our group in particular. The premise was that everyone had been mind-wiped and woke up together in a dungeon with no idea of who or what their characters were. Figuring out our appearances, our classes, stats, and etc. was all very different and interesting. We fought goblins, barely escaped, and started to learn little details about our characters. It was genuinely a lot of fun, and we were all really excited to step into the story. And then the DMPC showed up. He was intentionally vague and smug, very tall, dark, and OP vibes, and every check roll against him insta-failed. None of us trusted him as far as we could spit, and we figured that was the point. My PC, who is a half-elf, and another player's, halfling, shared that look of, he's going to be the big bad, isn't he? And mutually decided to keep an eye on him. The DMPC sent us on a chain of MacGuffin quests, wherein we would occasionally stumble upon more information about our pasts. As these quests continued, the DMPC continued to randomly show up, usually trailing the party at a distance, showing up in alleys, and etc. All suitably creepy things befitting a future villain. My half-elf and the halfling struck up a close friendship, and while most of the other PCs either didn't notice or didn't care about the DMPC's hovering, the pair of us always made sure to keep track of everything that he said or did, and he always talked to my PC. It was always her that was asked to make the perception roll to see if he would be noticed. Always her that he approached, regardless if the party was split up or all together. And my PC hated his guts. She was supposed to be neutral, but driven, and hate people who looked down on others, and that was how the DMPC acted. So she was naturally not a fan of him, and his brooding, snarky treatment of the rest of the party. Time went on, and the quests continued, and eventually we stumbled into a city market where the people recognized my half-elf. Everyone was immediately asking about her and the DMPC, and how he's doing. They're all surprised to see her without him, etc. And naturally, she was confused. Information digging ensued, and it turned out that she traveled with this guy a lot, and no one knows, or is willing to say, much else. Okay, cool. So all that stalking and attempts at conversations made a bit more sense. They knew each other. The next time the DMPC showed up, she treated him exactly the same as she had been, and he got increasingly more frustrated. The DM asked me out of game what my deal was, and why my PC was still treating theirs so badly after finding out that they used to know each other. I responded honestly that my PC didn't trust him. She didn't have her memories, and she only knew him as he is now, and he's been a bit of a jerk. She didn't like him, and that's not going to change because some random people kept asking how their travels were going. The DMPC started showing up more frequently, and now he started to flat out ignore the rest of the party, to the point of ridiculousness. He wouldn't accept the quest tokens from them, speak to them, or even make eye contact. And we were given an amulet to call for his aid if we needed help, but it suddenly stopped working unless it was my PC who used it. The encounters that were already poorly scaled to begin with became impossible. We were barely level 6 and facing multiple monsters at a time with ACs over 20, and resistances to every type of damage in the book. We approached the DM about it and were told that this was the reason that we had the amulet, so we should use it. My half-elf was a weird homebrew necromancer of the DM's making, and the DMPC started giving her crazy buffs and items that only she could use. The rest of the party was naturally starting to get frustrated when almost every encounter was a near TKO where only my half-elf was conscious to save the day. My PC and the halfling decided to break off from the party to do some research on their own, hoping out of game that this would keep the rest of our group safe from terrible encounters. The two of them travel around for a bit, trying to find a way to trap or do something to the DMPC, only for the halfling to magically vanish. Poof. My half-elf tried to find him, but no checks that she made, even at 20s, gave any information. No one in any town nearby knew him, or saw him, or had any idea where he was going. She tried to return to the rest of the party, who, surprise surprise, she also could not find any trace of. So she had to beg the DMPC to bring her back to them, and he does so, smugly thanking her for her groveling and making comments about how much he prefers her like this. Oh, Jesus. And where was the party? Somewhere hidden and terrible. No, just in another city that they had already been through multiple times, that the party collectively owns a house in, a place she obviously never could have tracked them to on her own. And now, magically, the halfling PC had a long-lost wife and a whole brood of children in that same city. He'd been zapped back to his family home by some sort of summoning spell, and that's why he vanished. Our halfling kept trying to leave, saying that he didn't remember this family and really didn't care much about them. The family was horrifically upset and begged him to stay, and begged him to not give up on his loving home to go off gallivanting with a half-elf of all things. And the DMPC talked to him for the first time in literal months of both in and out of game time, to call him heartless and a whole slew of other insults. Our party left the town and was promptly attacked by a spirit of greed, as you do. Another near TKO ensued, and so continued the pattern. Finally the day came, and the DMPC revealed himself as the big bad. We managed to destroy a talisman controlling his armies and called on the power of every ally that we had made throughout the campaign. The DMPC showed up, furious, and wiped out almost the entire party in a single round. Only 2 members of the party survived in the end, with one, of course, being my half-elf. The DMPC vanished with an evil laugh, and the DM closed out the campaign by saying that we stopped the evil, but didn't defeat the villain. That the world was safe, but we sacrificed ourselves to get there, which, okay, fine. But then, they decided to share all our collective backstories, as we would have reclaimed our memories as we fought the creature that took them. Most were mundane, nobles who disappeared looking for a higher purpose, traveling merchants with a chip on their shoulder, all very PG, cookie-cutter origins. Which would have been fine, but then we had my half-elf. She had apparently been a victim of horrific physical and sexual abuse all of her life, which was explained in graphic detail. She had only been saved a few years prior by the ever-so-kind DMPC, who arrived on the scene, slew her captors, and absconded with her into the night. They had traveled together that entire time, saving people and growing closer. She was supposed to be endlessly devoted to him, practically tripping over herself to earn his approval. And then he had gone and cast some bullcrap spell that accidentally took her memories as well as the other PCs. And then boom, there they were. And this whole time, his tomfoolery and snark was his way of showing how much he missed their time together, and how upset he was that she refused to love him again, even though he so clearly cared about her. The DM went on to describe everyone's futures, particularly the exact tortures that the halfling was facing in hell. Practically every member of the group was dead, and shuffled off into their little corner of the afterlife. The one other surviving member, besides my PC, was a half-orc who returned to his family, grew old, and died. And then onto my half-elf, who was doomed to spend the rest of her life wandering around alone, struck with horrible PTSD from her childhood filled with abuse, before eventually being found once more by the DMPC, and who even knows and cares? I stopped listening. I was furious. We'd all collectively tried to talk to this DM throughout the campaign about the difficulty of roles, the unfairness and inflexibility of the plot, and about the clear favoritism of the DMPC towards my PC, and how everyone felt that they were just the side characters in what pretty much amounted to the half-elf story. Everyone had just sort of tolerated it. We complained to each other on the side, but mostly just shrugged it off as, At least none of us have to worry about DM work this time, I guess. But yeah, that ending, it sent people reeling. I've never seen people walk out of a D&D session before, but everyone pretty much just stood up and, without a word, left. Needless to say, we haven't played with that person since, but yikes, it was a wild ride. I guess the take-home is that if you think the DM or their PC is being weirdly obsessive about a character for no other reason than just because, then you need to get the heck out before you get sucked into acting as the long-suffering love interest for their self-insert. Well guys, holy crap. I don't know if the OP happens to be of the opposite gender or if the DM had a crush on them, but that tends to be a thing that I've noticed with some of these is they'll do this crap because they are interested in this person, and rather than just, I don't know, talking to them and going, hey, I think you're pretty nice, they'll instead be frickin' creepy as hell. And if that's not the case, then this guy turned their normal sessions into what was effectively a mess. There's a lot of issues that I can go into, but some of the main ones is being the fact that if he wanted the half-elf's player, the OP, to like the DMPC, then why did he make him have such an insufferable personality? If he really thinks that that is something that people like as a personality, then this guy needs a reality check. And not to mention that if the DMPC was this long-standing lover of the OP's characters, then why would you not just tell them? Imagine having a significant other in a hospital bed with amnesia, and rather than telling them who you are and that you care for them deeply and all this stuff and going at a steady pace and helping them along the way, you're instead going to treat their friends who are also there in that same hospital room like crap and insult them and whatnot. Yeah, I wonder why people wouldn't like that. But that's all I'm going to say on this, otherwise I could go quite a good amount more time with this one. So let me know what you guys think in the comments about this story and about how much of a wonderful person this DM is, and have a good day.